everyone, it's Shar. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. Hello. I'm doing a video that I don't think I was going to do. It's fairly popular around this time of year, but the reason why I decided to do a spring TBR, even though I am such a mood reader and in 2024 I'm letting myself be a mood reader, is because my reading is a little bit chaotic right now. I just am aimless with what I want to pick up, and there are a bunch of things I'm excited about. So this is more of a record of things I am excited about and am prioritizing over the next 3 months, as opposed to things I'm definitely going to read throughout spring. I do want to warn you right now, I am racing against the clock for the sunsets, and I don't know the summary of every single one of these books, because what I do is I'll read the summary, decide whether or not I want to read the book, and then I'll forget about the summary because I just want to go in with no expectations. But I have a couple of sections in this video, so let's start with the books that I physically own that I want to read. The first book is The Sunbearer Trials by Aiden Thomas, which I believe is described as kind of like a Hunger Games scenario, but with some kind of magical realism, mythological element to it. And I have All Roads Lead Here, definitely influenced by Riley's Discord server, because Riley read this and the Discord is reading it and they're all loving it. And I'm like, well, I want to love it too. All Roads Lead Here is about this woman who ends up renting like this little apartment studio space above a person's garage, except that when she goes here, the father has no idea that his little studio space has been rented out, because it was actually his young son who rented it out. She has nowhere to go, so he agrees to just let her stay for the term that she booked, and it is a slow burn romance. Kingmaker by Kennedy Ryan, because again, I was influenced. Listen, Riley's Discord read this. I believe this is a little bit of a heavier romance involving an oil tycoon who's the son of like this person who's trying to put a pipe in this area that has a huge native population, and the heroine in this book is native herself and is fighting against the actions of this family, and it is a romance. And I have Check and Mate by Allie Hazelwood, which I was not planning to read, but I keep seeing so many people mention this as one of their favorites and how much they loved it and how good it was. The reason why I didn't want to read this is because Check and Mate is YA. It's a story of like this woman who was really great at chess, but she stopped playing due to family circumstances, and she gets invited by this person to come back into the chess world, and it's a romance. But I typically don't love YA, and I also don't love new adult. Listen, I work with people in this age group, and I don't want to read about my work, but because so many people love this, and I love Allie Hazelwood. You can't see it here, but like up there is pretty much all of Allie Hazelwood's books except for the novellas. I do not acknowledge those. But yeah, I'm excited to read this one. Let me tell you, I placed this stack in such an awkward angle. It is so hard to reach them, but I want to prioritize The Honey Girl, which is a sapphic romance about this woman who works in STEM, and she's a professor trying to get a role, and I think tenureship, and it's very difficult for her, and she's talking about navigating that as a Black woman, and she ends up going to Vegas and marrying this woman who she knows absolutely nothing about, but they fall in love over time. I know this is very poetic. I also know that it has mixed reviews, but I'm hoping that I will be in the party that loves this book. I've actually been in a pretty great mindset recently, so I'm hoping that I will continue to stay that way so I can finally read We Spread by Ian Reid. Do I know what this is about? No. I know it's about this woman who, I believe her husband dies, and then someone shows up at her home saying, you arrange end-of-life care for yourself at this kind of area that you can come stay at, and she has no memories of that whatsoever, but she's also been struggling with her memories. So it's that story. I think it's often marketed as like a thriller. I don't think that's true though. I think it defies genres, and I know that it makes so many people cry, and because I am in a good mental headspace, I think I'll be okay to read this. Don't start booing out. Okay, I know. I put this book on so many TBRs, but I have a physical copy of it, and I actually am several chapters into this book already. So yes, I'm finally getting to She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chen. It's often described as a Mulan retelling, and as I've said multiple times, I think that there is a lot more to it than that. We're following a young girl who is growing up in this town that is completely being destroyed by famine. It is very devastating circumstances. She and her family go to like this fortune teller who essentially says that she's going to amount to nothing, but her brother has a great destiny, except that her brother dies, and she decides, you know what, I'm going to take your place. And so we're following her story where she eventually becomes the war general. And I think at some point or another, there's some scenes going on that are potentially sapphic. And I'm very excited to get to those scenes. But also this book is just really good so far, which I always knew that it would be. How many times am I going to mention Riley's Patreon? Because the limit does not exist. Again, in Riley's Discord, people were reading A Study in Drowning by Ava Reed. Because this year I am prioritizing the books that I physically own, and I tend to have difficulty reading my special editions, I am going to read A Study in Drowning by Ava Reed. I don't know what this is about, but I know that it potentially has some like gothic themes, involves books or a library in some capacity, and I think it gets weird, and I'm very excited to see how weird that it gets. Sterling House by Alex E. Harrell. First of all, I just want to say, I love the clear cover on this. I think it's so pretty. I mean, the lighting is putting a lot of glare on it, but this cover is completely translucent with the starlings or the sterlings around here and the starlings around here. And I am just so excited to read this book. In this book, do I know what happens? No, actually I don't. Much like A Study in Drowning, I think it's like gothic. Taylor, I think, was reading this, and I want to read it too. So this next section, I'm just going to call historical romances, because it's actually a mix of books that I own, as well as books that I get from the library. So let's just lump them all together as historical romances. Again, very awkward placement of these piles for me. Okay, so the first few I do own. We have When a Scot Ties the Knot by Tessa Dare, which is one of my favorite tropes. It's this woman who is essentially, it's like her first season, but she doesn't want to get married. She really doesn't have any interest in that and whatsoever. So she decides that she's going to make a paramour for herself. You know, she's going to say, you know what, I'm actually taken. I am engaged to this person here who's like this Scottish lord that nobody's heard from. And she's like writing him letters and stuff, but she doesn't think that he's like actually real or getting them, except that there is actually a real lord who is, surprise, surprise, alive and has been receiving her letters. He comes back from the war and he's like, hello, wife. And that's my favorite fucking trope ever. I'm so excited to read that. I have Seduction of a Highland Lass by Maya Banks, which is the story of this man who like leads this clan, and he is duty bound to marry this woman from a rival clan. So on his way to go do that, he actually gets attacked and left for dead, and he's saved by someone he does not know, this woman who he thinks is an angel, but it turns out that's not who she is. She's not his betrothed, but it is their love story. It feels like it's going to be a little bit angsty, but I also just really love a strong heroine. And I'm getting the vibe that this could be he falls first. And I just want to see how this plays out for them. Is the sticker still on this? Yes, but you know what? I don't have time to care for that right now. Mary in Haste is a story that I just picked up because I saw it at the thrift store. And it's the story of this man who got his title, but his sisters are running wild and he doesn't know like what to do with them. But he finds out that their former teacher, who I think her name is Emmeline, is the only person who could kind of keep them in line, and they really like her. So he reaches out to her and offers her a marriage of convenience and says, you know what, like I really need your help. Please come help me take care of these girls, and instead of offering you the role, I'm going to offer you a marriage. She agrees. I think they fall in love. I know they fall in love. It's a romance, but the whole single parent kind of thing is something that I really love, and I am so excited to see like the children in this, because I do really love children in historical romances, especially when they play a prominent role. And then from my library, I have a Beverly Jenkins, which is Destiny's Captive. The only thing I know about this is that it is a pirate romance. This will be my first Beverly Jenkins, and I'm very excited to get to it. Now, let's talk about some of the books that I have from the library, and I'm going to group them together. You'll see why, because I have the rest of the books in the Donuts Under a Crescent Moon series. I don't think it's ever explicitly stated that it is sapphic, but like, it's sapphic. So I'm very excited for that. And also, I believe that one of the characters here is asexual. And again, that's never explicitly stated throughout this, but I know that it's definitely a prominent theme throughout this series. I read the first volume in Donuts Under a Crescent Moon. I really, really enjoyed it. And one of my goals is to finish my series. So by reading these 3 mangas, I think I will have completed the series. This is so heavy. Killing Stalking. I read volume 1 of Killing Stalking, which is a manhwa about this man who is a stalker, and he's stalking this person, He breaks into his house, and then he realizes that the person he's stalking and is so in love with is actually a serial killer. And I don't mean like a dark romance, morally gray serial killer. I mean, this man kills whoever he wants for no fucking reason. This is often described as a romance. And while there certainly is some kind of relationship between these two men, a romance is not what I would describe this as, but I did give the first book 5 stars. This series is so fucking wild, but it's dark. It's so extremely dark. Like, please do not go into this blind. And in fact, if you think I'm recommending this to you, no, I'm not. So I have volume 2 of Killing Stalking, which I'm excited to see where that's going to go, because volume 1 ended in somewhere. I was like, damn, and I thought it couldn't get worse. Then we have volume 3, and of course, volume 4. I think the series is still ongoing, or at this point they're at volume 6 or something like that. So this will get me a good way through that series. And yes, it's time. It's the Invocations, which I still don't know if I'm pronouncing correctly, but you know what? I'm going to say the Invocations by Crystal Sutherland. I don't remember what this was about. I know that it was one of my most anticipated books of 2023, and then it got pushed back to a 2024 release. I picked this up from my library. I think it has something to do with a missing person, and I think that there's some kind of like sapphic or queer element to this. I'm excited to see what this book gives me as I read it. With a very precarious pile of books at my feet, let's talk about some of the books that are on my digital TBR for spring. The first is The Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics. Yes, this is a historical romance, but I'm putting it in the digital TBR section. This is a sapphic historical romance, I believe, about 2 women who work in like the field of science and technology, so they're STEM girlies, but it's historical and it's sapphic, and I'm going to listen to the audiobook for this. Then I have A Lady for a Duke, which I've been so excited to read. I tried to read this physically, and that didn't work for me, so I really want to try to listen to the audiobook for this. In this book, we're following a woman who is trans, and she is just living her life in this town, and she used to have this best friend who she absolutely adored, but who believes that she is dead and that she died in the war because he does not recognize her as she exists now. And it is their love story because they come back together. I think it's some kind of pining. He doesn't know who she is, but of course she knows that that's her childhood best friend, and this is just, I've heard nothing but good things. Another sapphic historical, Don't Want You Like a Best Friend. I've been waiting for this one for a very long time, and I finally got my hands on the audiobook on Everend, so I'll be listening to this, and this is kind of like a sapphic parent trap. We have 2 girls who are best friends who are scheming to get their parents together, but as they're scheming to do that, they're also kind of falling in love with each other. Don't Want You Like a Best Friend is a Taylor Swift lyric from Dress, so every time I see this, I'm just like hearing the song Dress in my head. Also have The Witch King, which is a book that I've had on my Audible TBR for a very long time. I believe this is a romantasy following a trans boy who left the Fae realms and is kind of just here living his best life and trying to just like adjust to life in the human realm when the Fae King comes into this world looking for him and saying, we're getting married because we were supposed to get married. And he's like, well, I'm a boy. And the Fae King's like, I don't give a fuck. We're getting married. So he gets dragged back into the Fae world. I think it's their romance, but I know that it gets a lot more emotionally complex and darker than that. So I just hope that this book does not emotionally destroy me. Tempest of Tea. The only thing I know about this is that it's some kind of murder mystery, I think. But what I can say for sure is that there are vampires. There are vampires. And it's a book club pick, so like I was always going to read this. And again, I have the audiobook on Everend. Murder Road by Simone St. James, which I've been so looking forward to. It's a book troop pick, but I've been wanting to read this for so long. So I'm very excited that it's coming out. And I think in this one, we're following a couple who is on a road trip, and they find someone who's like seriously injured or something and are offering assistance. I don't know what the middle part of that plot is, but I know that they're now running for their lives. And it just sounds so good. Plus, I really enjoyed previous Simone St. James. Not all of them, but I literally have the Sundown Hotel on this shelf right here. I just hope that I love this one. Drawn. It's a sapphic romance. That's all I needed to know. But this is a Black Sapphic romance featuring two artists who are illustrators for this kind of webtoons series that I believe is now being turned into a comic. It's enemies to lovers, workplace rivals, and everyone I've seen who've read this loved it. Plus, it's on Kindle Unlimited, so of course I'm going to read this. And Swift and Saddled. First of all, I love this cover so much, and I read the first couple of pages in Barnes & Noble today, and I'm so excited to read this. This is a cowboy romance, and that's all I know. Aside from everyone has been raving about this and everyone has been loving it, and I want to be one of the people who is also raving about this and loving it. So that's everything that's already out that's on my physical TBR or my digital TBR for spring. I do have a couple of releases that I'm really looking forward to that are also coming out this spring, but disclaimer here, these are not all of the books that I'm excited about that are releasing this spring. There are some that are also releasing this spring that I'm really looking forward to, but I will not be reading until summer or fall. So these are just the books that are coming out over the next few months that I will also be reading within the next few months. First, we have Where Sleeping Girls Lie, which I believe just came out today. Not today when you're watching it, today when I'm filming this. And I don't remember this one, what this is about. I know that it's some kind of dark academia. This cover is beautiful, and I remember that when I read the summary, I was super excited for it, and I remember that the book was releasing today, so we will get to that. Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. I don't remember what the summary for this one is, but at this point, I've read 2 Abby Jimenez books. They sit on my all-time favorite shelf, so I'm hoping this one will also enter that realm. Late Bloomer by Maisie Eddings. Let me tell you something. On my most anticipated books of 2023, I put a book by Maisie Eddings, which had a very, very similar summary, but a different name on my list. And then that book completely disappeared. And I think the book that was on that list is actually this one, Late Bloomer by Maisie Eddings, which is the story of a woman who wins the lottery and she decides that she's gonna purchase a flower farm because she's tired of people taking advantage of her. So she's gonna go purchase a farm, live her best life, and go and do that. Except that when she goes to do that, there's someone who's like, I'm the rightful owner of this flower farm. You shouldn't have been able to buy it, but they agree to run it together, and it is a sapphic romance. Wow, I just realized how many of the books on here are sapphic. I love that. A win for the girlies. The Succubus Prize. I love monster romance so much, but something that I constantly struggle with is that I want to read queer monster romances, which there's another one, by the way, which Opal Rain just released, which is MM. The cover is right here. I will be reading that, but I'm scared because it's the 6th book and I haven't read past book 3 just because these books get very long. But anyway, trying to find queer monster romances, and this one is a sapphic monster romance by Katie Roberts, so that's all I needed to know. And finally, we have The Honey Witch. I don't even have the words. I believe this is a sapphic romance or a sapphic fantasy with strong cottagecore elements, and listen, that's the perfect spring read in my mind, so I can't wait to get my hands on this, and I'll be very, very jealous of those of you who are getting that special edition because there is a company doing a special edition for this in their book box. So those are all of the books on my spring 2024 TBR. As always, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you found a recommendation in this video for a book that you want to add to your own TBR, and let me know what you're looking forward to reading this spring, and I'm going to see you in my next video. Bye!